So good morning, good afternoon, good evening to all of you, depending where you are. We are Mauro and Tino. I'm in Italy and Tino is in Germany. So we have seen many registrations from many places of the world. So welcome to this webinar today. Today's subject is, as Tino was mentioning before, IEC 61511. And we are going to give a brief overview of the standard. During the registration, just one service information, during the registration we have collected some questions from you, and we will see that question and we will answer that question at the end of the seminar. Furthermore, there is a chat box which can be used by you to raise questions. I will pick up during the presentation of Tino, we'll pick up questions and we try to answer almost all questions. And as Tino said, this is going to be registered. This webinar is going to be registered and will be available on YouTube, GMI channel. And you will also receive a PDF of this presentation. So let's try to change the page. Normally it takes a little bit of time to warm up and to change.
No.
It seems
doesn't work.
Yes, I'm controlling your screen, but it doesn't.
Yeah, it's coming.
Okay. It's coming. Okay, let's see, it works. So, a few words about who is here presenting, giving this seminar. We have Tino, one of the most knowledgeable guy on functional safety. He is director at GMI of our functional safety unit. I'm Mauro, I'm sales director for GMI. I'm going to I leave later on a few words to Tino. He can introduce himself a little bit more better. And I'm going to give a small introduction about the company, who is GMI, and GMI is giving this webinar to all attendees. So GMI is a company dealing with safety. We cover a couple of aspects of safety. One, it is functional safety aspect, which is subject of today's discussion. The second one is intrinsic safe. So you find GMI as design and producer of field interface, and you find us in almost all automation packages like DCS, ESD, fire and gas. And we are covering almost all industrial sector, ranging from oil and gas, food and beverage, pharmaceutical, chemical, and so on and so on. The company has 40 years experience in this field. We are proud to have our production side as well as research and development in our premises here in Italy, not far from Milano. And of course, we are a global player and we are present in many countries in the world, almost in all 5 continents. Dealing with safety, quality is of course one of the most important things. So we produce, as said, everything here in Italy, and everything before to be delivered to customer is 100% tested. And since we deal with functional safety, our company is certified by third party as capable to deliver functional safety equipment up to SEAL 3. This is a range of the product. We have ES barrier, we have safety relays, we have isolator, power supply, multiplexer. We have termination board, which are customized for any of the main DCS and ESD system. We have heart multiplexer, surge protectors, okay, some loop indicators, and we have our department, functional safety department, which is, Tino is our director for that department. And through that department, we offer functional safety training as well as services. In the near future, we will have a similar department for intrinsic safe. Okay, as said, we are Italian, but we are present almost in worldwide. We have 8 subsidiaries. We have offices around the world, as well as partner. And we are delivering, just because we are talking about functional safety, we are delivering 18 to 20 training per year. Okay, 2020 is a very special year due to COVID. Unfortunately, we will not be able to cover the same numbers. But in 2021, or at least at the end of the year, we will try to recover this situation. And of course, we have thousands of installations around the world. We have different kind of customer, ranging from system vendors, EPC, OEM, as well as, of course, end user. What to say? Nothing else, I would say. The subject is quite not hard, but it is quite complete. Many things have to be said. So I leave the speech to Tino. And Tino, I will interrupt you whenever there is a question that we try to answer online. Thanks, Tino, and thanks to all of you.
Thank you. You need to release your control, because you're still controlling my screen. So
give up remote control.
Thank you.
Good.
Well, thank you, Mauro, and thank you, GMI, for giving us the opportunity yet again to, let's say, give some awareness to the audience who are logging in free of charge here. And today's topic is called the IEC 61511 Lifecycle. And as Mauro is saying, we have quite some items to cover, so we will try to keep it brief, although it's sometimes difficult. And I thought, when I made these slides here, because this webinar has been done a few times already, but I thought one of the most, let's say, condensed overviews is to start from the beginning. And you see here on the left timeline corner here, I call this my timeline here on the bottom. On the left, we go back all the way to 1996. Maybe some of the younger engineers may thought, or may think now, well, that is even before my time, which is probably true. Well, in 1996, back in the US, the ANSI ISA 8401 was the first life cycle approach that came on the market, which was here by this logo known from the ISA. The IEC norm, which is coming out of Switzerland, the IEC 61508 was a specific standard which was dealing with functional safety for electrical signals, electronic signals, and programmable electronic safety related equipment. That means it was a safety lifecycle approach that was released in 1997, as you can see over here. But the safety lifecycle approach had 2 different types of expressing, in a qualitative way or in a quantitative way, how much safety are we achieving with that type of equipment. And everyone knows in the industry that this specific standard 61508 was mainly for the manufacturers, not so much for the practical applications by the end users. So for the end users, we had here in 2004, we had the IEC 61511 edition 1 coming out. And that standard here, edition 1, has been adopted by the ANSI ISA 8401. And I have here between brackets a small asterisk. And the small asterisk is just to say that in the US, the ANSI ISA 8401 adopted the edition 1 of the 61511 with the additional clause, which we used to call the grandfather clause. And the grandfather clause was coming out of the Code of Federal Regulations, which is coming out of this OSHA document, which is referred over here. So in a nutshell, or in a summary, the 61511 edition 1 was a one-to-one copy that the US was using, but in the US, they enhanced it by one of the committees called the S84 committee, that they are actually defining a grandfather clause, which I will come back on this, because in our edition 2 of the 61511, we have something very similar today applicable in the industry. But as you see here on the left bottom corner, when the edition 1 came out, and when the ISA 84 adopted the edition 1 of the 61511, the old ISA 84.01 became obsolete. And now we're moving now to 2010. And in 2010, here on the right top corner, again, we are with the IEC. Here you recognize the IEC 61508. And the IEC 61508, the topics is still the same. But the edition 2 changed, let's say, quite some items that you may have to be aware of and able to understand what functional safety in your instruments or in your systems is all about. And I give you here some of the buzzwords. And the buzzwords, I call them maybe the buzzwords, it's maybe wrong to say that. Let's say some of the key definitions. If you do not understand those between brackets, I'm pretty sure you are totally lost to try to understand documents, specifications, or even certificates, or even reports that manufacturers will give to you. So you need to know what is road 1H. You need to know what is road 2H. You need to understand what is proven in use, and proven in use is dedicated for the manufacturers. You need to understand what does it mean systematic capability. As Mauro was introducing the company GMI, he mentioned their systematic capability tree is it's compatible to build equipment up to SIL 3. That means systematic capability for a manufacturer is actually showing you the quality of design from hardware and or software from a certain device. And that quality measurement, systematic capability will show you what level of SIL they can achieve. Now, when edition 2 came out, 2010, it is worth to alert you that edition 1 became obsolete. That means since 2010, April, to be exactly correct with you, April 2010, all the manufacturers are bringing out equipment after that date cannot quote or say that they are compatible or suitable to edition 1, as edition 1 is no longer valid. Now we're moving on. The topic for today is this one over here. And here you see a mixed date. We have 2016, 2017, and there's a main reason for that. It was released in different parts, and when it was released, the edition 2 of the 61511, the initial release of edition 2 had some, let's say, some problems, some mistakes. So there was a corrigendum out. That's the one over here. In September 2016 was a corrigendum on the original edition 2 from February 2016. And in August 2017, so almost 3 years ago, we had a consolidated version. That means that's the amendment number 1, which actually goes back to the edition 2 with the corrigendum and the amendment. And that is the valid one today that any project should use in able to comply to the IEC 61511. Part 2 and 3 was all released in July 2016. So today it's 4 years old. And again, between the brackets, those are the key definitions that you have to know in able to understand what to build to come to a functional safety compliance. So we have here road to 8. The first topic is prior use, and prior use is something dedicated for an end user. Proven in use is for the manufacturer. Prior use is for the end user. With your instrumentation, with your validator, in your environment, with your experience, with your proof test consistency, coverages, etc. No safe failure fraction is the preference of the standard when you will call for prior use. And that is based on road 2H, which was coming from road 2H from the 61508. And there, the road 2H with the manufacturers is still called proven in use. Of course, when proven in use or prior in use is not applicable or not suitable to be used, or you have no evidence that you can prove it, then you have to go back to road 1H. And road 1H, that is the old original 1997 edition 1 of your table 2 and 3 of the 61508 standard. The other thing which is new by the standard here is systematic capability, which is coming, of course, here from the 61508. And last but not least, the hot topic in the edition 2 is the security risk assessment shall be carried out. And because we are now in a late time zone for Europe, we were hoping to catch some more people from the other side of the world, which is then North America. And maybe some of you are based there, because based on your name, I cannot judge where you are based. But here for you in US, the ANSI ISA, which used to be called 84 all the way up till 2018, since September 2018, so nearly 1 year, you no longer call it ISA 8401, it's now called ISA 61511. That means finally, in Europe, we call it IEC 61511 from the very first day. Now in the US, you adopted the 61511 and you got rid of the 84.01. There's another reason why it took almost 2 years to adopt it, because there were also some, let's say, discussions going on in the working committees about the amendments, etc., etc. That is why later on this webinar here, we will refer to some other documents, and there are some technical reports in US being modified as we speak that will be clarifying on how to use that edition number 2. So here you have a complete timeline of the entire safety, let's say, functional safety standards for manufacturers and for 61511. But the topic for today, as Mauro was introducing, is the 61511. That means if you look at the standard, and here you have a copy of the 3 parts of the standards. And the 3 parts of the standard edition 2, if you look here on the bottom right corner over here, here we show IEC 61511 part number 1. So when you see -1, that means part number 1, that's the first part of the standard. That's exactly 84 pages in English. And those 84 pages are the normative section from the standard. And that's important to understand this here. Normative means if you have to comply, well, then you have to show evidence that you comply to the normative section, which is different for part 2 and part 3, because those are the informative section. So when I go back to part number 1, the normative section, there you will see the framework. They will talk about the life cycle. They will talk about the functional safety management. They will talk about the documentation, the planning. All of that will be covered there in this part number 1. They will also talk about on how to build your hardware and your software requirements. Software will be dedicated later on as application programming of a safety PLC. So sorry, I had a timer on, but my timer was just gone because my screen was saving. I just want to note my time. So we also have project planning and management requirements. We have technical requirements, which are quite different by edition 2 than they were in edition number 1. We have also competency, and again, there is a huge topic on competency, which is new by edition 2, which was not the same in edition 1. Part number 2, if you are new to this business, my recommendation would be take part 1 and part 2 side by side. Read part 1. If you doubt what part 1 is trying to say, try to find what is the interpretation, because part number 2 will give you guidance on how to read and understand and use part number 1. Of course, not all guidance may be crystal clear. We all know it's always subjective. So a lot will depend also on how competent you are and how do you understand and read that text. And then part number 3 is again informative. It will give you guidance on how to do your SIL selection, SIL determination. It will give you the LOPA details. It will give you the systemic dependencies on systems. So all this will be explained in part number 3. Now, before we will continue, I will ask my colleague Mauro to launch here the poll questions. And maybe Mauro, you can read the poll.
Yes, we would like to have some feedback from you. So we are asking you, to vote, to select who of you have access to the standard 61511 or 61508. Okay, 511, sorry. Let me see how many answer. You just wait a few seconds again.
Yeah, we have the votes coming in, and there is no, there's only a single selection you can make. So you cannot make multiple selections, so it's single answer.
I will close the poll.
All right. And then you can share the results. Here we go.
Let's share the results. Here we are. Can
okay.
You see that?
Well, we see there, when I start on the bottom, we see none of the above. Well, that's a shame. I mean, this is good engineering practice or good engineering know-how, which is on the market since 2004. That many committees have done a tremendous effort to bring this on the market. But I mean, it's never too late to start to consider it. I'm using edition 1 was 8%. Well, again, I would say be very careful because edition 1 is no longer valid since 2016. Unless you live in the past and you have to comply to the past, I would say good luck. But for any modern, let's say, installation or newer projects after 2016, I doubt that I would recommend to use edition 1 because edition 1 is obsolete. Then we have about 33% of the audience is saying we have no access to none of them. Well, again, that's maybe the same as none of the above. Well, you also have no access, so that's also not so good. And then we have, of course, we have 25% here, which is like, you know, a part of, let's say, one fourth of the entire attendee said, we have access to one of them, and I'm using it. So I just hope you're using the correct one and you're not using one of the older revisions. And the top question was, or the first question A, or answer A, sorry, was, have access to one of them, but have not read or used it. And typically I say the following. It doesn't matter how many good books you have in your library. If you don't read them, if you don't use them, it doesn't make sense to actually try to refer to them. So I all know we all have a stressed life. Well, maybe now with Corona, it's a whole different life, especially for me as I'm not traveling. But I would like to recommend to any practitioner out there listening today, those good engineering practice, they have a reason why they are on the market. And I know even out of experience that this is edition 2, which is out 2016 in US 2018. I can tell you now that the maintenance teams are now talking already and having some material discussions about edition number 3. So this is a never-ending story. Don't think because you have used edition 1 that clearly you will use edition 2 or understand edition 2. It's all about competency, how you read and how you use and understand it. Okay, I will stop sharing and I will continue. Right. So for those who are new in this business, never have seen it, I try not to make it too boring. I'm an engineer. I like pictures. I don't like text. But here on the right-hand side, everything with this blue is, let's say, blue color. That's all the normative requirement from part 1. And you can see we have technical requirements and we have supporting parts. Supporting parts are often called the non-technical requirements or often referred to as the management requirements. Whereas technical requirements, let's say most of the technical engineers will have a very easy understanding on how to use this. I will not go through there. The good news is for those who are listening in that new edition 1 and use edition 1, well, edition 2 has changed nothing in terms of the framework. So the two fundamental concepts remains the same. We still have to follow a safety life cycle, which is a systematic approach, and I will show you the life cycle in one of the next slides. Plus also, we still have the same SIL level. And we still quote SIL 1, SIL 2, SIL 3, SIL 4, and it's still the same performance range, knowing that a SIL 1 is allowed to fail 10 times more or be 10 times more less available than a SIL 2. So it's still the same performance bands which we are using. The only name change in edition 2 versus edition 1, we no longer call it application software. We call it now application programming. That means no matter what safety PLC, no matter what SIL integrity that safety PLC may have, your application program that you program inside that, let's say, safety PLC can only reach the maximum SIL that that safety PLC has been accredited to. Many of those should recommendations from edition 1 became a shall command, and that's a huge difference. I'm not native English because I'm Flemish, I'm actually Belgium, but if you would study proper English and you go to Oxford University and you search what a shall definition means, there is no but or excuse, you shall do it. And edition 2 has a lot of shall commands in there, where in edition 1 was, well, you should maybe think about it. Now you should not think about it, now you shall do it. And that's a whole different concept from our edition number 2. Performance-based, that means it's not prescriptive. In other words, you cannot blindly follow the life cycle and say, we will be safe. You still have to perform in a certain fashion. And all the, let's say, reference to the edition 2 of the 61508 that are made are referred to the 61508, which is the latest edition which is the 61508 from April 2010. All right. In the meantime, I started my timer again because my timer keeps on shutting down. So, general life cycle overview, as I already mentioned, a life cycle is somewhere like a systematic approach on how to do your business. Now, all engineers, we don't like to follow instructions. We like to think we are engineers. We are creative sometimes, and then we always think we know it better. Well, that's not a very good concept for safety. So the fundamental concept of the life cycle is purely there to try to minimize making human failures. How can you do that? By increasing the instructions, the procedures, and for most, to increasing the quality. And the quality will be measured in a topic which will be called functional safety management. And that's why we're going to have those functional safety assessments. Now, you may have heard about this famous number called PFD. It's like the probability to fail on demand. In other words, it's an expression that will estimate what is the likelihood something will not work when I need it. And that number is your performance band of your subclasses of your safety instrumented function. So that remains the same in edition 2. That's not changed with edition number 1. Life cycle, which you see over here, is also the same, except if you go here in the middle and you look here in box number 4, you see here clauses 11, 12, and 13. Now, for those experts listening in, you know that clause 11, that's your design and engineering of your SIS system. You know that clause number 12 over here, that's your paragraph 12 of part number 1, which is your validation or your FA, sorry, that is not your validation, that is your application programming, because now new in addition to, and I was really too quick talking because now I wanted to mention your paragraph number 13 or clause number 13, which I referred to here, was not in edition 1 mentioned in the life cycle. It was being called informative. Now, edition 2 is calling it normative. And what is here, number 13? That is your factory acceptance test, which makes sense. If you build a system, you don't want to ship it on site before you're testing it. So I will walk you very briefly through the complete life cycle without losing too much time, but let's assume you have a project. Always start with the same definition. We have to identify what kind of hazards we're going to deal with. Once we understand the hazards, we have 2 questions to answer. How bad it is, that means the consequences. How frequent, how likelihood this will happen. Now, how bad it is, our human brain easily can actually think about it. Depends on the volume, type of product, type of hazard, etc. Frequency, we never agree with each other. We always dispute, we always have to come to an agreement with a group decision. What do we think or how often will this happen? And that is now the key issue of functional safety, let's say, challenge. If your very first moment in any project, your likelihoods are misjudged, you will never protect yourself to reduce that frequency. Now, we will do some other sessions, or we have done some other webinars already, so here we'll be very brief. So once you have identified your hazards, you know your likelihood, you know your consequence, then you can define your risk. And your corporate management of the end user / the operating companies, the corporate model will tell you what is tolerable, what is allowed in our factory, in our company, in our industry, yes or no. Based on this, we're going to do, in the second phase, we're going to do LOPA. LOPA is nothing more than layers of protection analysis. And layers is layers on top of each other to try to protect your unit. So that LOPA is in some cases, in some, let's say, end user applications, not allowed to be used. And I personally like this. While I know when people are starting to work in LOPA, I used to call them, they are the, let's say, creative engineers, like to play with numbers. And you give a creative engineer a bunch of numbers and a calculator, and he can be quiet for the whole day. So in other words, people are sometimes creative to try to reduce frequencies and numbers in their LOPA, let's say, spreadsheet or LOPA platform or software package, whatever they are using. With some customers, they don't want to do that. They're going to go conservative and say, listen, we have done phase number 1. Let's take the risk matrix, and we're going to go 1 cell higher in our cell matrix than what we actually would need. That means skip this calculation, go straight into the SRS, and the SRS is there. That's another webinar which we have done already. The SRS will define what do we have to build additionally to reduce the risk. Then we go into design and engineering, which means design of physically the hardware, the wiring, the safety PLC configuration, I/O assignment, whatever. We're going to go into the logic application programming in the safety PLC, or maybe with hardwired logic, or maybe with safety relays or whatever. And then we're going to go into FAT. On the side here, you have other means of risk reduction. You're going to combine those on-site installation commissioning. On-site, we call this here the validation. We'll be calling your site acceptance test. And then it's down to the operation and maintenance. And that's the longest phase on all the, let's say, utilities on-site, because the plant may be running for maybe 15, 20, even 30 years, depending on in which area you're going to have your factory running. Modification, that's another phase, and then decommissioning. Everything must be managed. We have done an FSM already webinar, so you can go on YouTube channels and you will see everything on FSM. We have done a webinar on the SRS. I have done last week, about a week ago now, we have done one on stage 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5, which is your functional safety assessments. We mentioned already a verification in one of the other webinars we have done. And I also mentioned something about the modification in our assessment webinar of last week. So what is the life cycle all about? I don't want to repeat or read all these topics. I want to save some time here. But in a nutshell, for me, a life cycle is a systematic approach to force the people to follow. And once you have the systematic approach, you will have some papers, some procedures on how to do this. And then you're going to have some quality checks with checklists, with verification. And on the verification report, you're going to make an independent assessment. All of that, the verification and the checklist and the assessments and maybe even the validation, it's all there to prove evidence that the work you have done correctly. That needs to be managed here with the FSM. That's what they say over here. And of course, different life cycle approaches will be used by end users versus system integrators versus manufacturers, etc., etc. Now, Mauro, we have a second poll coming up.
Yes, I launched the poll. The question is, in other words, is how life cycle activities and requirement impact in our activities while engineering a safety system or a safety loop.
Okay, so the life cycle activities and requirements by edition 2 will change per SIL level. That means, do you think that will change when you have a higher SIL? That some of those activities will change? Will be irrelevant to the SIL level? Will be not applicable for SIS or for safety instrumented systems built before February 2016? Or do you think none of the above? I mean, again, it's a single answer selection. You cannot select multiple answers, but that is here our second poll, which is based on some of the, let's say, common mistakes that we see that people are asking in either chat boxes or even sometimes that we know they are sending it in as a pre-registration question. And let me just open also the, oops, that's the Q&A box. Okay. So, Mauro, let's just wait a little bit.
Yes, we wait a little bit.
We have half of you are still awake, the rest is still sleeping, so that doesn't matter really. But if you could make your selection, I would appreciate, because the more votes we get, the more clear the picture may come.
Okay, I think we can close now.
Okay. All right.
And
so the results, starting with the first one. There are 38% of the people in the group here or in the attendees listening today thinking, wrongly, I have to say, and I apologize for that, but 38%, that's more than that's 1/3 of the entire group here, is saying that the lifecycle activities will change per SIL level. I don't know where this misunderstanding, or let's say this confusing in the world, in the industry, is coming from. Especially in 6.15.11, because it doesn't make any difference if you're going to go for a SIL 1 or a SIL 2 or a SIL 3, or even if you would go for a SIL 4 loop, which is not recommended. The standard said do not use SIL 4, use other risk reduction. Now, where the confusion may come, and I will go a little bit more in depth now in the 6.15.08, which is not this webinar, that's again another webinar, But the 61508 is changing tremendously for the manufacturers on SIL levels. The higher the SIL, the more restrictive, the more difficult, between brackets, the more expensive the development will be for the hardware / potentially for the firmware or software, whatever you call it. And that is clearly 61508 business. But once you as an end user, as a system integrator, you are buying a SIL 1 instrument or you're building a SIL 2 compatible, suitable instrument, for you the life cycle, how to design and engineer it will not change. You may think like maybe yes, maybe your architecture will change. Yeah, but the life cycle activity still stays the same. It's just a table for selection of instruments. Then irrelevant of the SIL level, well, 1/3 was having the correct answer. That's the second one. I like the 8% saying it's not applicable for us because the SIS was built before. I would say, well, it depends. If your customer today, 2020, still operates that plant and still wants to prove, maybe to the regulatory body, that he runs the plant safe, well, then you will have to prove that the grandfather clause, which I mentioned you from the edition 1, is now also part of the new edition 2. That means you're going to have to prove how your system was built, to what requirement specification it was built, it was specified, and for most, how can you prove you have maintained that specification in terms of, can you prove the performance of your safety system is still applying the older specification? That means even for the older SIS, we still have to apply the new life cycle if we need to prove evidence of compliance to any authority or regulatory body. And none of the above, well, clearly this is not the correct answer. All right, I will stop sharing and let's give you a quick summary. What is the life cycle all about? And I will do this. I will put the 3 blocks here. I call them the 3 main blocks of the IEC 61511 life cycle. And the first top over here, or the first block over here, which is number 1, we call this the analysis phases. That's where you do a lot of investigations, discussions, meetings, that you will have to agree with each other. What is the hazard? What is the likelihood? What is the consequences? Can we take some credit for existing layers, yes or no? If not, we're gonna write a requirement specification, and that's all the analysis phase. That needs to be managed, needs to be planned, and of course needs to be verified. Every phase before you move on to the next phase needs to be verified. Once we leave this here, you see in the middle here, that's here the air gap between 1 and 2, we have stage 1. And again, I will not mention too much now, but that's a mandatory normative functional safety assessment called stage 1. And I will very briefly give you here the definition. A senior competent person, independent from your design team, shall make an expert judgment. That means he is not allowed to be part of the design team, and he or she needs to make an expert judgment to judge that that requirement specification covers all what this life cycle phases are trying to define and achieve. Then you go into phase number 2, that's the realization. Physically, you're going to start to build systems, items, wiring, programming, etc. You go on site to installation commissioning, and in between here, we see stage 2. Again, stage 2, same story, same senior requirements, same independency from design team, etc. All the way to stage 3. Stage 3, again normative, again go to the webinar of last week, which is the Function Safety Assessment webinar. And there I went more in depth, what documents are required, what do you have to produce, etc. And last but not least, for the end user, that's here the block number 3, which is phase 6, 7, 8. That's mainly ops and maintenance, modification and decommissioning. What is new by edition 2? And again, go to the webinar of last week. Stage 4 is a periodic returning assessment. It needs to be done by a senior competent person not involved in the same maintenance and the same operations of the same SIS. Stage number 5 over here is modification requirement before you start and after you finish. That means stage 5, you're going to have to carry it out twice. And again, we covered that last week. And the overall here is this number 4 is mean management needs to be done for all those phases. Life cycle structure and planning have to be done for all the phases, and also the verification. What I have done here, and that's the slides you will get as Maro was already confirming, So the slides will be done by PDF. Of course, the PDF will not record my voice. That's why we will have on YouTube also this webinar being recorded. And I see that our marketing person is also listening in. So we have to do our best, Mauro, that they are very happy with us, as usual. So I'm just joking with Mauro because he was reading some slides. So what are the analysis phases 1, 2, 3, which is the ones over here? That's the first block. Well, as I already mentioned, and I will not repeat this again, the critical items here are you start in phase 1, you require that the hazards are identified and that you will analyze the consequences and the likelihoods before, plus also you have to include new by addition to security risk assessment. And security risk assessment will be referring to another standard. This is the 62443, which is the main standard that let's say most people will use. And that security risk assessment will work with security levels, not with SIL levels. It's the same concept, but it's a different topic. LOPA, second bullet, third bullet means that when your tolerable risk cannot be achieved by your existing layers, you have to come up with additional measurements, counter measurements on how to reduce your risk. I was thinking about the security, but it's here about safety and about risk. Application programming, that's in here. You need to define also what needs to be programmed, and then you have to carry out stage number 1. Once we are moving in the realization phase, I would say if you would start to build systems and stage number 1 has not been carried out, anyone knows that we have done that in the past. That's a very costly exercise. If you start to find out during design or maybe even during the FAT that the system will not reach what the end users needs on site, it's a very costly exercise to start to change your design already, because maybe you have done some wiring, done some programming, have done some of your assignment, whatever. That means it makes sense to do stage 1, but after have done the FAT or during the FAT, honestly speaking, that's what we call the FAT witness test. And that's where the assessments, stage 2, are normative and also, again, very important. Then you go on site, and before you introduce the hazard in the production unit, stage number 3 is again normative and is again very important. Mr. End User should not start up before the expert judgment will give him the allowance to start up after making or having seen evidence and make the judgment that the system is suitable to reduce the risk on site. And last but not least, we go to the bottom over here. And here we have the operator and maintenance. We have the operator and maintenance. And typically, many end users' attitude is like almost fit and forget. And I'm not joking now. And I know. It's because of practical experience going on site or training the end users. Many end users, they have a, let's say, pressure from production, let's say, management or from operation management. And of course, everyone knows that without producing the product, there is no money coming in. So very often it's very driven that the turnover of the, say, the production will have a priority on doing maybe proper maintenance, especially when it comes to the useful life. If you think about useful life, which is again some topic which is covered in other webinars, useful life, go back on site. If there is any end user listening here, think about your safety critical shutdown valve and ask yourself the question, is your useful life that the manufacturer defined for you or the assembly of the manufacturers defined for you? Are you still running your mission time inside the useful life? Yes or no? Because typically when your valve is still working, you do not often get the, let's say, allowance by budget means or management means to go and replace it by maybe a revamp or maybe a newer valve or something like that. So anyway, operation and maintenance, what is the main topic by addition to? We require in addition to quality data. And quality data will be through operational and mechanical integrity plans, which are also referred to in the standard. And there are a few references which are giving in the standard, which one is the NE 130, that's the NAMUR standard, or let's say guidance. And the other one is technical report number 4 from the ISA 84. Proof test efficiency and consistency is very important now. FSA stage 4 is periodic and returning. The question is, what is periodic? It's not mentioned every year, every 2 years, every 3 years. This is mainly dictated by the regulatory body, and in some of the countries that I work with, for instance, in UK with HSE, it's every 3 years or every 36 months, a periodic assessment is normative required. Modification, typically known as the MOC, that's your management of change, needs to be carried out, and the FSA before and after your modification is taking place. Now, to summarize the general parts, the management of functional safety, I would recommend go back to the webinar on YouTube on functional safety management. There are some key issues. Even when you have all your SIL documents correct, you have all your calculation correct, or even you have all the certificates, you still do not comply to anything without proving functional safety management for any product supplier and for any service supplier. That means any system integrator or maintenance service or whatever service you supply in the life cycle phases, you shall have a functional safety management in place and prove you are using it. Does it mean, or it doesn't make sense to have a quality procedure if you don't use it? You have to prove that. Right, we have the last poll of the day, I think, or no, the second.
Yes, I launch it and we ask you, who of you has followed the competency review program?
Yeah, this is more from my personal interest here, Mauro, that I would like to know from those who are listening, and I see we kept most of you, so there's not so many have left, so it's good. The poll question is, who of you listening today has followed a competency review program on the edition 1 and still has today a valid certificate? That means a personal certificate to prove that you are competent in edition 1. Same question here, who of you have followed edition 1 but your certificate is currently expired? This is often seen, people forget to renew or something. And what is more interesting for me is who of you out there today have already followed edition 2 and has a valid certificate for edition 2? And how many of you have none of the above? Means from a standard point of view, and I have to be very frankly with you, you do not have to follow a competency program, but you have to prove you are competent. So the question is, how do you prove that? Well, you can say, I know everything. My name is X, and therefore me, I know everything. Well, listen, if the outside world, including the inspectors, maybe the insurance companies or whoever will do an assessment, will believe you on your word, I could say good luck. But we all know that's not really how it works in the industry. And that's why sometimes people think that competency review programs are somewhere, of course, there's a market or a marketing behind there trying to drive this. And I will not be here saying which one is correct or which one is better or not, because we all try to achieve a certain, let's say, level of competency evidence to prove you know the content. All right, to finish this, Mauro, you can finish it, I think.
Yes, I am the poll and show the results.
Okay, so we have here 13%. That's edition 1 followed and still has a valid certificate, which I would say that's good on you. Because edition 1 was out 2004, that means no matter when you follow the competency, it has to be done before 2016, because as of 2016, we have edition 2 out. So you were not allowed to give a competency review program after 2016, referring to edition 1. So edition 1, but your certificate is expired, that is 0%, so that's also good. We even have some 13% here following edition 2 and have a valid certificate. I would say I would like to congratulate you, because that's the edition 2 that we are trying to follow. Unfortunately, and I have already guessed this answer, I saw that many people have no access to the standard. That means you cannot really prove you're competent if you have no access to the document anyway. And the majority of the entire group listening in today, which I have to be saying thank you to follow this webinar, because at least you have a little bit of a feeling what the life cycle and the standard is trying to achieve. But as we see here, worrying enough, I have to admit, 75% of the entire group has no, let's say, competency review program evidence. All right, and I think by memory, we have one more slide, which is called the summary, which I haven't told you yet, is out of experience since 2004 to 2020. And I was already in the business with the functional safety as of 1997 with the 61508. I have a feeling that the market and the industry focus too much on numbers. And everyone focused too much on SIL numbers and PFD calculation. The majority of the engineers, the majority of the projects are struggling to prove where are these numbers coming from, are struggling to be challenged by experts to explain how they come to that conclusion. And mainly the end users are struggling to prove how they will maintain this. It can look wonderful on paper, but if the end user cannot maintain the plan to this performance numbers, it doesn't make sense to even produce a report. Functional safety life cycle is not just to, let's say, make your life miserable and say to the engineer, do this way. It's purely an attempt to give you guidance on how to prove it on paper, on how to check it, on how to verify, document it, assess it, etc., etc. And I can tell you one thing, even when you have a SIL 1 or a SIL 2 or a SIL 3, Safety PLC will not make your safety project SIL 3 compatible. That means one of your elements has maybe compatibility to a certain SIL, but it stops there. It doesn't go through your entire safety loop function. And it always comes down to competency. That means you need to be trained, or maybe you can do some self-education. You can listen to webinars as you do today. You can start to read some books. You need to be performing towards the standard enabled to become a competent functional safety engineer. And even being in the business for over 20 years, nearly 30 years now, I can still admit today, we still learn every day. And it will never change. It will always keep on changing. So we as GMI, we can help you with services in the entire life cycle. And again, I will save you time. I will not go through the entire life cycle support, but we do give you support on all those items like the PHRAs, low pass determination, calculation, functional safety management, and also assessments. We also have with a different cell already, we're doing some life cycle support for the 62443, which is security. As Mauro was saying, we used to do 18 trainings before this Corona or COVID was actually stopping us from traveling. So I doubt this year that we will not even reach maybe 50% of our numbers. But typically in a normal year, we do like 15 to 18 trainings a year. And the main program that I actually personally will provide for GMI or under GMI is called the TLV Rheinland Functional Safety Engineer SIS. I have done like 176 trainings worldwide, and I have trained 2,360 plus people. We do the same training, which will be launching once COVID will be releasing, or let's say relaxing our limitation. We're going to launch also the cybersecurity training. Of course, we do in-house customized training. We also have the webinars. And the best book, I mean, the book that everyone will refer to is here, our edition number 4. We even have done a webinar. What is the content of the book? So even on YouTube, you will find the book, and I'll give it over back to Mauro. I will stop sharing. And now I will let Mauro to share his last Q&A, which we collected before the registration.
It looks like, Tino, you have been very clear during the webinar, because we have just one question right now.
We get a question here, a live question, which I think yes, but I'm not sure. The question is, as I remember, we will be getting a seminar attendance certificate, right? I'll probably say yes, because that's, I think, what I've seen before, but I'm sure that Mauro may be confirming.
Yes, we have this possibility. You just send us an email and we will forward to you kind of certificate of participation.
Yeah. Okay, so it's answered. So we can answer this live and can go away. Click. All right.
Tino, you confirm me that you see the...
I see the slides, Q&A.
Q&A, okay. As said, during the registration, we recorded, we collected some question and answer. as soon as I will be able again to get control of my slides, I will go.
Yeah, but I was just moving my cursor because I was opening, sorry, Maro, I was opening the attendees list, but okay, sorry.
No, but I think it is nothing to do with you.
Okay.
Anytime I take the control, it takes some time before I can really start. In fact. Okay, so some question and answer, I leave you to answer. So one of the questions was, I am interested to understand how we can verify compliance with IEC 61511 in the commissioning and operation phase.
Okay. All right. So I recommend that person that asked this question during the registration to listen or view the GMI Function Safety Assessment, because again, how can you prove as an end user operating company in your operating phase, in your operating and maintenance phase, or in your commissioning phase, installation and commissioning phase? That would mean you're maybe the EPC contractor asking this if you go on site, and how can you prove that? But it all comes down, in my personal humble opinion, to the expert judgment during your functional safety assessment. So for the commissioning phase, it's clearly your stage number 3 FSA, or function safety assessment. That's expert judgment, needs to make a judgment based on documents that during the commissioning, you actually fulfill the requirements that you had to fulfill, enable to, let's say, validate the system to prove you reach the requirements from your safety requirement specification. That's the first answer. Second answer, on the operation phase, that's why we ask for a periodic assessment. And I would recommend, very highly recommend, to any end user operating company listening to this webinar to consider that. Because I can tell you now that it depends, of course, what is the expert judgment competency level, okay? I give an example. I went on an end user and I asked him a few questions. He said, that is strange, Tito, because the previous, let's say, judgment or inspector that came here didn't make a point from that. He didn't even ask us this. I said, well, you ask 10 inspectors, you may have 10 different questions because we all may think different. That means, again, it's subjective, but it's all down to the level of your inspector, let's say, quality. So again, to come back on bullet number 2, the FSA stage 1 all the way till stage 5 are normative required by edition 2. After installation commissioning, that was stage 3, and during operation and maintenance, that's stage number 4. Yes, Maro, let's please go ahead because we are reaching 57 minutes already.
Yes, I still have problem in changing the page. I don't know why. Anyway, I raised the question, then here we go. Would like to know steps for a company to become compliant to IEC 61511.
Okay. That's also one that is often used or often asked. I've seen this question a few times already in different webinars. Maybe it is the same person. We see that during registration, many people are coming back with the same questions. I don't know. Anyway, what is now here the topic? Based on the definition of the 61511 edition 2, 2016, any supplier, as already mentioned, of a product or a service shall have a functional safety management system in place. And you need to prove how adequate you are using that for your product and or your service you are delivering in that life cycle. So in other words, it doesn't make sense to buy SIL compliant devices without having an FSM. Without an FSM, you do not comply to the 61511. Regardless of the nature of your company, if you are now an installation commissioning supplier, or if you're now a maintenance supplier who is doing some calibration on site or doing some maintenance on site, or if you're now providing a training like I'm doing, we all have to have a FSM in place to prove that. And many companies will use that to say, don't go to the competition because I have this color of paper or certificate, and they don't. That means many companies will have a third-party accreditation of their FSM, of their product and or of their services. That's not mandatory by the standard to have a certificate. It is purely to have an independent judgment to prove that their service for product or for a service itself is actually in line with the 61511. Yes, Maro.
Yeah, again, same. So the second last question is, which are the important difference between 61511 and 61508 life cycles?
Okay, well, here on the left-hand side, you see the life cycle of the 61508. On the right-hand side, you should recognize the 61511, which we have been handling today in the webinar. You can see from a concept point of view, it's the same. You start from top to bottom. We call this a waterfall principle. That means you first do phase 1, then you roll into phase number 2, but you should not start to roll into phase number 2 before you came out of phase number 1. Between phase 1 and phase 2, we do the verification on all of them, on both left and right. They both, left and right, 61508 and 61511, work with SIL 1, 2, 3, 4. However, the main difference will be in the, let's say, technical details, and the restrictive requirements for SIL 1, 2, 3, 4 are different on 61508 than they are the same for the 61511. What is also different, the left-hand side talks about proven use, the right-hand side, 61511, talks about prior in use. In a nutshell, you can see that the streamline to go to the framework is more or less the same. So the concept may be the same, but it's more the technical and the fine details that may be a little bit different. All right, Mauro, let's jump to the last one.
Okay, so the question is, what is the impact of 61511 on the process industry?
Right, well, the impact, I already mentioned that to you. I think the impact certainly caused too many people producing, and now I'm going to be very blunt, useless paper. They are producing reports all based on assumptions, assuming that. Let me ask you the following question. And of course, now with the corona, it's a bit of a sensitive question. Now, none of us can define exactly on paper, when will we die? Why do you think that you can do it for your instruments in the field? Because in summary, SIL is nothing more than saying, when will the safety loop not be available when I need it? And the funny thing is, not about dying, that's certainly not fun, but the funny thing here, with the prediction on paper, everyone starts to believe it. So in other words, it's purely based on an assumption. We try to assume that you're going to use your system in a certain fashion, you're going to maintain it in a certain fashion, we make all these fancy calculations, we're going to be very precise, but in reality, it's often not even applicable, not even a magnitude applicable. It's 10 times, often 100 times worse than what the paper was saying. So I would say stop fooling around with numbers. What is the main purpose of the functional safety standard? It's not to fool around with numbers or play with numbers or start to believe all those numbers. Yes, we need to prove how reliable we are, so we have to have a number. That's by the standard means. However, the key issue is, how can we make people following guidance to make less human mistakes? And that's, of course, the main topic, to reduce the human mistakes. None of us can actually calculate when we will make a mistake, but all of us can try to increase the quality to minimize the human failures. And that, I think, it is the main topic for today to remember. As the last bullet is saying, we still have a long way to go. People often today don't know yet, or they don't know what they don't know yet. In other words, they think they know until you start to challenge them and ask them some questions. Yes, Mauro, I think we can close the session. Is Mauro still there?
Can you hear me?
Yes, we hear you now.
Okay, I was muted. So just to inform and confirm that we have several other webinars running, even August and September. Let's see if we will go on also in October. So several subjects are covered. You can check on our website if you find something of interest. So we have other subjects and topics relevant to functional safety. We have topics relevant to intrinsic safety. We have application, webinar based on application, on relays, power supply. You just check on our website and you find something interesting. You are more than welcome to join us. And we have a very last question for you. We ask you to rate this webinar. Did you find it interesting? Yes. You're answering rapidly.
Yes, and I think not in line with the expectation. I mean, the expectation, if you think about it, if you go to a webinar, register for a webinar, you know the topics. And of course, we will not give you a topic where then we will give you different stories or different slides. So it's our interest to give you the most of your time, that you are taking the most out of know-how or awareness out of this webinar. So not in line with the expectation has not been a very common answer. All right, Mauro?
I think we can stop and share the result.
Okay.
And so what I shall say, thank you very much for that. That's what makes us proud. Looks like we have done a good job, Tino. Congratulations.
Thank you. And thank you for all the people listening in today from wherever you are in the world.
So let's close.
Yeah, you should
section.
Stop sharing and yeah, leave it there.
I have some issue in handling this. So thank you very much again. As said, we have other webinars, so we look forward to see you connected to us again. You will receive a PDF of the presentation. You can check on the web on YouTube. You can review this webinar, or you can view the webinars on other topics. And if any of you has specific question, you just reply to the email while you receive the presentation. And if you need the certificate, as it was mentioned before, we can provide you, no problem. So let me check. There is a very last, no, there is an open.
No, there was a question, but I think it's a mistype. I just get letter A, so it's not really a question.
So I think we can close here.
All right.
Thanks for all. Thanks to all. And see you next time.
Keep it safe, keep it healthy.
Let's hope that everything will, the situation with the COVID will give us the chance to meet in person and not through a PC.
All right. Thank you, everyone.
All the best to all. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye. Ciao. Ciao, Mauro.
Ciao, bye-bye. Ciao, Tino.